All right, let's just jump right in. What if everything you think is real isn't the full picture? Not even close. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild spiritual lecture from 1990. It lays out this whole other framework for, well, everything. Our universe, our lives, and a hidden spiritual world that it says is pulling the strings behind the scenes.
So the lecture starts with this just incredible idea meant to totally flip your perspective on scale. Get this. What if our entire universe, with all its billions of galaxies and stars, was just a soccer ball sitting inside a giant stadium? Yeah, that one single image, it's the key to understanding this entire worldview.
Okay, so that soccer ball idea leads us straight to the first big point, what this lecture calls the problem of perception. The argument is that our reality is just tiny. We think we're out here exploring this massive, endless cosmos, right? But from this point of view, it's like we haven't even left the kids' playroom.
And here's how they break it down. Our 3D world, our universe, that's the soccer ball. But the real reality, the spiritual world, is the gigantic Tokyo Dome stadium it's sitting in. It's like we're ants crawling on the surface of the ball. To us, it feels endless, right? We just keep walking. But we have no idea we're trapped in this tiny, contained little space.
So, if our whole universe is just a sandbox, think about that. What does that say about all of our greatest achievements? All our incredible technology, our science, our art. How small must all that look from way, way outside the box?
Well, the answer given is pretty humbling, to say the least. From that perspective, humanity building skyscrapers and flying to the moon, it's basically the same as a little kid making a mountain in a sandbox with a plastic shovel. We're so proud of our little sandcastles, but we're completely clueless about the huge, real world just a few feet away. It's a really jarring way to think about everything we've ever accomplished. But, the issue isn't just about our place in the cosmos. It gets way more personal. According to the lecture, because our perception is so limited, we're wide open to these unseen influences from that bigger spiritual world. And these aren't just passive forces. They're supposedly affecting our thoughts and actions, like every single day.
And then comes this absolutely staggering claim. The lecturer states that between 70 and 80%, let that sink in, 70 to 80% of all people are being negatively influenced by spiritual entities without even knowing it. This isn't framed as some rare, spooky thing. It's presented as the normal, default state for the vast majority of us.
So, okay, what exactly are these influences? The lecture calls them akura kure, which translates to evil spirits. And we're not talking about just some vague bad energy here. No, they're described as actual souls from hell that literally attach themselves to people on Earth. Once they're attached, they can mess with your personality, whisper negative thoughts into your head, and nudge you towards doing things that are bad for you.
So, right about now, you're probably thinking, a soccer ball universe? Evil spirits everywhere? Where in the world did all this come from? And that's the thing. The speaker presents this not as some new philosophy they cooked up, but as knowledge that came directly from a massive, life-changing spiritual revelation.
And this wasn't something that happened overnight. The whole journey started with a major spiritual event back in 1981. But it took years for the speaker to even process it all, not even publishing the first book about it until '85. The public movement we're talking about? That didn't officially kick off until 1987, almost a whole decade after it all began.
Okay, so if that's the problem, a tiny reality and unseen negative forces, what's the solution? Well, the lecture lays out a surprisingly systematic, almost scientific approach to finding what it calls spiritual liberation. This isn't about just believing blindly. It's about following a set of rules, almost like a kind of spiritual physics. And the core of that solution is a total reframing of what life is all about. The idea is that our time here on Earth, it's not the real deal. It's more like a training ground or a limited test period for our souls. And what that means is that every tough thing you go through, every challenge, every hardship, it's not just random bad luck. It's an applied problem, like a question on a test, specifically designed to help your soul learn and grow.
So how do you pass these tests and solve these problems? The first step, according to this, is to connect with the teachings themselves, through books, lectures, and so on. These materials are said to contain a spiritual power called light. And this light isn't just a metaphor, it's described as a weapon, almost like spiritual harpoons, that can literally strike and force out those evil spirits attached to you, leaving you with a clear mind and a sense of freedom.
And what's really fascinating here is just how methodical this all is. The lecture literally quantifies the power of these different methods. So reading a book gives you a certain amount of this light. Listening to a recorded lecture on a tape, that's 3 times more powerful. But being there in person at a live lecture, that's even more powerful. 6 times the spiritual impact of just reading the book. It's like a video game power-up system.
Now, this whole process isn't just about fixing your own problems. The end game is way, way bigger than that. Liberating just one person is seen as one small but crucial step in this massive plan to completely transform the spiritual environment of the entire planet.
The logic behind it is this kind of positive feedback loop. It goes like this. You help save someone who's living, right? When that person eventually dies, they don't end up going to hell. Over time, that means the population of hell starts to go down. And if there are fewer souls in hell, that means there are fewer evil spirits available to come back and mess with people on Earth. That makes it easier for the next generation to find their way, and the whole cycle just keeps getting better and better, creating this amazing upward spiral for all of humanity.
So, the entire mission, when you boil it all down, is to basically hijack a negative system. It's about taking this downward spiral of suffering that the world is supposedly in and flipping it, reversing it into an upward spiral of spiritual progress and understanding, one single person at a time. And really, that brings us to the final takeaway from all of this. After all the cosmic ideas about soccer balls and all the spiritual physics, it all comes down to one simple but really powerful question for you to think about. If you truly believed, deep down, that this life was just a limited-time test, what would you do differently, starting today? What would suddenly become your top priority, and what would you realize doesn't really matter at all?